The film opens on the middle of an isolated road with a pair of soldiers transporting a new species. The alien named Eve came to Earth and escaped a government facility before terrorizing the greater Los Angeles area. She was finally brought down by authorities and is being taken back to base to treat her life-threatening injuries. The pair become lost, so the passenger tries to radio their superiors and tells the driver Abbot to pull over. He does so and suddenly pulls out his pistol to hold his comrade at gunpoint, when both are surprised by an alien as Eve managed to reproduce in her short lifespan. The rapidly aging half-breed kills the passenger with its tongue that launches out like a retractable spear. His mother sits up, and Abbot watches from the back of the van as she goes into labor with a second child while her firstborn attacks her. It strangles Eve to death as the driver runs off in terror, but he's taken the newborn in his jacket. He flees from an arriving helicopter and the firstborn escapes before the government locate the truck abandoned. Finding their specimen deceased, Agent Wasach's put in charge of locating the fugitives and orders an autopsy to be conducted on Eve. After going over her corpse, the coroner informs Wasach that Eve was recently pregnant, so the agent tells him to destroy all records and burn the body. Sometime later we follow an aspiring science student presenting an experimental fusion reactor to an interested party. Claiming that the device could give limitless power to the greater Los Angeles area, Dean's reminded that he's late for his next class by his roommate Hastings. He's a student at the university and is late for his biochemistry class with his teacher Dr. Abbot. The alien abductors revealed to teach at the school primarily and believes that a virus is the perfect life form. He argues with his new student who rebuts that they aren't perfect since they can't reproduce on their own and need a host to survive. As class wraps up, Abbot complains that the CDC's scheduled to destroy the last remaining batch of smallpox, and finds it offensive that they get to decide whether a species lives or dies. On his way out of class, Dean's pulled up by the head of the school, Dr. Turner. He finds the student to be spreading himself too thin with all of his classes and tells Dean to pull the plug on the fusion reactor, calling it a pipe dream and telling him to focus the funding elsewhere. While walking through the courtyard, Abbot overhears his student's money problem and leaves to check on the alien. In his quaint suburban home, he walks inside looking worried and finds his pet cat dead on the basement steps. In his secret lab inside his basement, the doctor keeps Eve's offspring, who's growing 6 inches a day, and requests red lobster for dinner. After dumping mittens, the two eat vastly different, with the alien refusing to use cutlery and biting directly into the crustacean's shell. The girl chooses her name from a dessert brand and is told by her surrogate father to never go outside due to danger. Abbot hides nothing from her and tells her that she's the third generation of a new species born of an alien DNA sequence. He also breaks the bad news that she's the only of her kind, but that he believes within her DNA lies the key to many scientific discoveries. That night, while Abbot's at the university, he has a visit from a stranger who demands to know where the girl is. He's the half-breed child that killed Eve and rapidly aged into a man before beginning to decay. While Abbot runs some tests on him, the intruder says that there are other half-breed aliens just like him, but they aren't as cooperative. The doctor finds that he's affected by simple bacteria that barely harms a normal human being, but the crossbreeds have a flawed DNA coupling, causing them to be susceptible to diseases, as well as have their tentacles burst from their abdomens and die painfully. The doctor pulls an all-nighter and meets Dean early to ask for his help. Having heard about the school pulling his funding, Abbot promises to change everything and shows him to the half-breed's decaying body. The doctor wants to use the remains to create the perfect alien DNA sequence with the primary objective of winning the Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, in Father's absence, Sara evolves by forming an organic cocoon on the kitchen ceiling. She emerges as a fully grown woman with a sudden desire to find someone to populate with. Dr. Turner's come looking for Abbot to find out where his funding's being spent and discovers his hidden lab as the result. He breaks into his house but comes across Sara standing there naked and void of any emotion. Attempting to leave, Sara begins to seduce him into breeding with her, feeling it's her one purpose in life, but ends up rejecting him when she detects that his genes are imperfect. Annoyed at his lost opportunity, the doctor becomes aggressive, so in defense, Sara turns into her natural form and impales him with her tentacles in the head. By the time Abbot and Dean get to the house, she's already gone and the two find her suspended cocoon. Seeing Dr. Turner lying dead, Dean relents that they need to go to the authorities and explain the whole thing, but Abbot blackmails him with the notion that the police are going to implicate the both of them in the murder. In order to help with disposing of the body, Dean demands to have equal credit for all of Abbot's studies relating to the alien. The doctor agrees, which Dean didn't expect him to since it's his life's work, and they strap bricks to Turner's body and throw him in a nearby river. They wait at Abbot's house for her to return as we see that Sara's found some clothes and is attending a party on campus. She tosses incompatible partners out of her way and finds a suitable candidate, but he's still lacking. After having no success, Sara sits on a street bench when a kind lady offers to take the cold stranger home. When stopped at a passing train, Sara begins to chase after it as she senses another half-breed on board named Yosef. Unable to keep up, she trips over and has her arm severed off, but by the time her driver reaches what she thinks is a distressed woman, the regenerating alien grows back her limb. She returns home, and the next day when Dean arrives, she attacks him, but he announces himself as Abbot's assistant and is allowed entry. Abbot's conducting an autopsy on the dead half-breed and says that the diseases they carry is also what causes the species to act so erratic. He says that Sara's the purest form with more of her DNA shared with her alien mother than the others, when she walks in and requests to go outside. The doctor allows it despite Dean's objections in hopes that she'll see the place as a home and less of a prison. She immediately goes searching for Yosef, who's disembarked the train and senses her presence drawing near. The two meet up at a hotel and begin to prolong the lifespan of their species, but again Sara rejects him when she senses that he suffers from a disease, leaving the half-breed angry. The police begin to look into the disappearance of Turner, while Hastings shows off to Dean the link to a dating website. A woman named Amelia wants to date biochemists and has sent out an oddly worded email reaching everyone's attention, including Wasach. During Sara's next blood test, she strips down in front of Dean in preparation to give a sample, which she admits to Abbot that she'd prefer to have the student take it. When he begins, Yosef suddenly attacks Sara in his alien form and tries to impregnate her before he succumbs to his disease. Dean tries to save her but is knocked away by Yosef and helped escape by Abbot, who activates hydrochloride gas inside the lab as a security measure for killing Sara. He claims to have already harvested her eggs and no longer needs her, but Dean runs back inside to rescue her anyway, almost getting himself killed when the alien takes a bite out of his leg. Abbot follows him in and uses a power saw to hold off the weakened Yosef while Dean saves Sara from the gas, but the doctor's grabbed by one of the tentacles before he can escape himself. Yosef mortally impales him with his spike before finally succumbing to the acidic gas and dying. Before he bleeds out, Abbot tells Dean that more evil half-breeds will be coming for the valuable eggs, but to do what he can to save the species. After he treats his wounds, Dean tells Sara the whole story but refuses to help her reproduce, with the line that just because you can, doesn't mean you should. He then disposes of Abbot's body in the same river as Turner and sets it on fire, before returning to the doctor's abandoned lab to ponder whether he should continue going at it alone. When he hears Sara leaving, he follows her to his campus where she's lured him to try seduce him. Knowing it's a bad idea, Dean goes for it anyway until seeing her alien form and making a quick retraction. When he gets back to his dorm room, Hastings confesses to leaking Dean's research papers to the woman from the internet. She seemed interested and is now currently on the way to the university to speak with them. Amelia is the leader of the half-breeds and refuels at a gas station on her way to what she thinks is a cure. She goes to the ladies' room to cover her minor deformities caused by her failing immune system. The station attendant walks in and is easily convinced to join her on the toilet seat, before the alien walks out, leaving the man to be found by his friends, having had Amelia's tongue driven through his skull. She then arrives at the campus where she meets Hastings and makes herself at home in the dorm. After taking a shower, Amelia tries to seduce the student into showing her his lab from the papers, assuming that he's Dean. Hastings admits to his deception, so the alien begins to threaten him to take her anyway and again attends to her flaws. Dean gets back to the dorm and notices the half-breed, so he takes off running, but Amelia hears him outside and chases him into a ladies' dorm room where the humans left outside to be killed in the hall. When she's about to go for Dean, Amelia suddenly senses Sara's presence outside and leaves to meet her. She takes Hastings to Abbot's house where they hold him prisoner in the lab and force him to create a new generation for their species to continue. Sara begins to feel discomfort in what they're doing, but Amelia keeps her focused with the reminder of extinction. Back at school, Dean's tracked down by Agent Wasach, having followed Amelia from her suspicious website. He says that he's not there under official capacity but hunts half-breeds as he feels it's his civil duty. The two go back upstairs and Dean goes over everything possible looking for a weakness that they can use against Sara. Hastings is able to make a specimen capable of surviving Earth's conditions but needs to inject it into one of Sara's harvested eggs to grow it. But before he's able to, a gas grenade smashes through the window as the boys have arrived. The sulfur incapacitates the women and nearly kills Amelia when it melts half her face, while Hastings snatches the rest of the eggs and runs outside to join his saviors. The three flee to the nearby power plant where Dean works at, but are followed by Amelia and Sara, who sense the eggs. The security guards instantly sliced in half by final form Amelia, and she chases the group around the plant. Dean splits off with the thermos and attempts to trap her inside the fusion core, but he's stuck inside with her. She kills another guard and, still melted from the acid, succeeds in retrieving the eggs from Dean. Before killing Dean, Amelia gives him a kiss, giving Hastings enough time to activate the fusion generator, causing the magnet effect to consume Sara's eggs. Angered by this, Amelia returns to finish Dean, but Sara arrives in her true form and stops her by throwing the half-breed leader into the core. Dean then manages to close the shaft to prevent it exploding, but Amelia returns to grab Sara at the last second and drags her down with her. The whole event's covered up by Wasach, who tells the media that an explosion at the plant was caused by Dr. Turner, which also consumed his body. With him to blame for everything, Dean recovers back at the dorm room with Hastings by his side. He goes to get them something to eat and removes both Turner and Abbot's missing posters from the notice board. A few weeks later, Hastings drops by Abbot's house to see Dean and discovers an alien child with Sara still alive. He frantically races downstairs to warn Dean, but he already knows, and explains that she survived the fall and he pulled her to safety. Since her own DNA was causing the half-breed's problems, he used what DNA they had left of Amelia to create a partner for Sara free of her own genealogy. The child grows up instantly and they plan to depart together when Dean asks Sara why she saved him after her eggs were already gone, but she says that she doesn't know as she's begun developing emotions. After Sara and her mate have departed, Hastings says that one day their offspring will probably try to take over the world, but Dean reveals that he's engineered him to be sterile. And the movie ends.